Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back in time. Not to a battlefield or a royal court, but to a dusty, sun-drenched room in 15th-century Venice. We're going to explore one of the most profoundly important, and let's be honest, profoundly dull inventions in human history: double-century bookkeeping. I know, try to contain your excitement. But here's the thing, this quiet little revolution of numbers made everything else you know about the Renaissance possible. Without it, your favorite explorer probably couldn't have afforded his ships, and your favorite artist might have been a penniless grape farmer. You're going to become a Venetian merchant, and frankly, on day one, your business is a complete and utter mess. You probably won't survive the first official year. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet little signal that helps this channel immensely, and while you're at it, drop me a comment and let me know what city you're listening from, and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you're aware of is the light. It's not a direct, harsh sunlight. It's a soft, silvery light, reflected off the water of the canal below and dancing in shimmering patterns across the heavy, dark beams of your ceiling. The second thing you notice is the sound, a gentle, rhythmic lapping of water against the stone foundations of your hull, punctuated by the distant, melodic cry of a gondolier calling out at an intersection of waterways. Your head aches, just a little, a dull throb behind the eyes that might be from the cheap wine at the tavern last night, or it might be from the quiet, persistent anxiety that is the constant companion of a merchant in this city of glittering, precarious fortunes. You push yourself up, the coarse linen sheets scratching slightly against your skin. Your bedroom is also your office, your scrittoir. It overlooks a small, bustling canal, and through the leaded glass of your window, you can see the lifeblood of Venice flowing past. Barges loaded with vegetables for the Rialto market, sleek black gondolas ferrying men in fine silks, and the general, ceaseless hum of commerce. This city is the center of the known world, a place where wool from England, silver from Germany, and spices from the furthest reaches of the Levant all converge in a whirlwind of trade. And you are a small, hopeful part of it. Your gaze drifts from the beautiful chaos outside to the ugly chaos on your desk. There it is, the source of your headache, the monster that haunts your sleep. It's a pile. There, a disastrous mountain of parchment scraps, vellum notes, and wooden tablets. Some are receipts for bolts of damask silk, scrolled in hurried charcoal. Others are IOS from other merchants, sealed with wax that has since cracked. There's a note reminding you that you owe a sailor from Ragusa his wages, tucked into the back of a cheap devotional woodcut of St. Christopher. A wine stain obscures the final digit on a bill for 3 barrels of Malvasia wine. This is your accounting system. It's a method historians would later call single-entry bookkeeping. But for you, it's just how things are done. You record what comes in. You record what goes out. Or at least, you try to. When you sell something, you make a note. When you buy something, you make a note. The problem is, the notes are everywhere. They don't talk to each other. They offer no grander picture. How much do you actually own? How much do you owe? Is your business growing? Or is it slowly bleeding out? One misplaced receipt at a time? You have no real way of knowing. You just have a feeling, a gut instinct, and this terrifying pile of paper. This morning, you're looking for a specific receipt, a big one. Payment for a shipment of glass beads you sent to Alexandria a few months ago. It was part of a CEO Colleganza, a classic Venetian sea loan where a traveling partner takes your goods abroad to trade. It's a clever system, a kind of temporary partnership that limits your risk, but it means you don't get paid until he returns, and his accounting is likely as chaotic as yours. Did you receive the payment? You're almost certain you did. You have a vague memory of a courier, a heavy pouch of silver ducats, a celebratory glass of wine. The where is the proof. Without that slip of parchment, The debt is still technically outstanding in your pile. But if you try to collect on it again, and you have been paid, you'll be branded a cheat and a fraud. Your reputation, your most valuable asset, would be ruined. You run a hand through your hair, the anxiety tightening its grip. The whole magnificent, terrifying, intoxicating machine of Venetian capitalism runs on credit and trust. Yet, the very tools you use to track it are clumsy, primitive, and profoundly unreliable. It feels like trying to build a cathedral with a shovel and a bucket. Historians, by the way, still argue about what came next. They debate whether the system that would save you was the invention of one brilliant mind, or if it was a trade secret, an evolutionary leap that was bubbling up in the back rooms and counting houses of Venice and Genoa for decades, passed down from master to apprentice long before anyone thought to write it down. For you, in this moment, you don't care who invented it. You just know that there has to be a better way. You dig deeper into the pile. The parchment is dry and crackles under your fingers. One slip is a receipt for ship's biscuits and salted pork, the supplies for a small coastal trading run to Ancona. The ink has faded to a rusty brown. Another is a note from your sister, asking for a small loan to pay a dowry tax, with a tiny, tear-shaped smudge blurring her signature. Each piece of paper is a story, a moment in your commercial life, but they refuse to form a coherent narrative. They are just scattered sentences from a book whose pages have been torn out and thrown into the air. This method, the one you were taught, the one every merchant you know seems to use, is called single-century bookkeeping. It sounds official, but in practice, it's little more than making a list. You have a book, your Libro di Conti, your book of accounts. In it, you write down transactions as they happen. Paid Marco the boatwright 10 silver grossi for hull repairs. Received 5 gold ducats from a visiting Florentine for a bolt of Flemish linen. It's a simple, chronological diary of your money. When cash comes in, you note it. When cash goes out, you note it. Simple. The problem is, simplicity is a liar. It hides a world of peril. What if, in your haste after a long day at the Rialto, you forget to write down the payment to Marco? The work is done. The money is gone from your coin purse, but there is no trace of it in your book. It's a ghost in your financial machine, an expense that never officially happened. Or worse, what if a tired scribe, dipping his quill by candlelight, writes that you received 2 ducats for the linen, not 5? There is no opposing entry to check it against. There is no alarm bell that rings. The error simply sits there, quietly, poisoning your understanding of your own wealth. You cannot, for instance, look at this book and understand your net worth. It's impossible. Your ledger might show you receive 500 ducats this year. A good year. But it doesn't separate the 200 ducats you receive from selling goods revenue from the 300 ducats you borrowed from the Bank of Sor and Zio liability to the single-entry book. Money is just money. It doesn't know the difference between income and debt. It can't tell you if you are profitable, only if you are cash minus flow positive, and even that is unreliable. It's like trying to navigate a ship by only looking at the wake behind you, with no map and no stars to guide you. And then there's the matter of trust. This system is frighteningly easy to manipulate. Say you have a business partner, and you both keep your own records. You believe he owes you for a share of a cargo of cotton. He insists he paid you. Your book says nothing. His book says he paid. Who is right? It becomes a matter of your word against his, your reputation against his. Disputes like this end up in the mercantile courts, where judges, who are just other merchants, listen to both sides and often make a ruling based on who seems more honorable or who has more powerful friends. Hard evidence is a slippery, transient thing. A page could be torn from a ledger. A debt could be forgotten. Historians who study old ledgers from this time often find strange gaps, suspiciously tidy entries, and notes in the margins that say things like "he swears before God he paid this," which is hardly a sound accounting principle. You finally find the account for the glass bead venture. You see the entry for when you purchased the beads from a Murano glass minus blower paid 25 ducats for 5 crates of fine glass beads. Good. You see the note detailing the Colleganza agreement with Lorenzo, the traveling merchant who took them to Alexandria. It stipulates your share of the profits. Excellent. You see the cost of loading them onto the galley, the fee for the port authorities. It's all there. A neat list of your expenses, your investment, but the final, crucial entry, the one that makes it all worthwhile, is missing. The line that should read received from Lorenzo 40 ducats. My share of the profit from the Alexandria venture is simply not there. Your stomach clenches. Did he cheat you? Is he claiming the ship was lost, or that the beads were sold at a loss? No, you saw him just last week at the church of San Giacomo di Rialto, looking smug and wearing a new silk doublet. He certainly didn't look like a man who'd lost a cargo. So, the payment must have been made. The fault, the terrifying, costly fault, must lie here, in this pile, on your desk. You remember now, the courier delivering a pouch. You were celebrating a different deal that day. The sale of some English wool. The wine was flowing. Did you take the pouch, thank the courier, and then, in your pleasant haze, simply drop it into a drawer, making a mental note to record it later? Did you scribble it on a scrap of parchment that is now at the bottom of a canal, or was used to light a candle? The academics are still trying to figure out how organized the average merchant of your status truly was. Some argue that most businessmen had at least one primary book, a libro maestro, where they tried to keep a running tally. Others believe that, for many, the reality was much closer to what's on your desk, a chaotic protocol, a collection of day-minus notes and receipts that were meant to be organized later, a later that never quite arrived. You were living that academic debate, and right now, it feels less like a historical question and more like a personal crisis. The beautiful morning sun is streaming in. The sounds of the city are vibrant and full of life. That in your small room, you feel a cold dread. You are trapped by your own records. The very system meant to bring order has created a prison of uncertainty. Frustrated, you shove the pile of papers aside, a few errant slips fluttering to the stone floor. It's no use. Staring at the mess will not solve it. You need to walk. You need to feel the thrum of the city, to remind yourself that you are a part of this grand, flowing enterprise and not just a man rounding in disorganized receipts. You splash some water on your face from a ceramic basin, pour on a sturdy woolen tunic over your linen shirt, and step out of your cramped quarters. The air outside is thick with the smells of Venice, the brine of the lagoon, the scent of baking bread from a nearby pista, and a faint, exotic whiff of cinnamon and cloves from a spice warehouse down the canal. You don't take a gondola. You walk. Walking in Venice is a unique art, a constant navigation of narrow alleys, or kale, that suddenly open onto sun-drenched squares, or campi, before plunging back into shadow. You cross dozens of small, arched bridges, your footsteps echoing on the worn stone. The city is a labyrinth, but it's your labyrinth. You know its secrets. Your destination, as it so often is the Rialto, not just the famous bridge, which at this point in history is still a wooden pontoon structure, crowded with shops and constantly in need of repair, but the entire district. The Rialto is the heart of Venice, its engine room. Under the covered arcades of the Sotto Port, go del Banco Giro. Merchants from across the known world gather. Germans, Florentines, Greeks, and Dalmatians all mingle. Their voices a cacophony of different languages and dialect. It is a place of business, but it is also a place of news and, most importantly, of gossip. You find a spot near one of the stone columns, trying to look casual, like you're simply waiting for a business associate. You are, in a sense. Your business is listening. The air is buzzing. 2 men beside you, their fine clothes marking them as members of the powerful Diarma family, are discussing the price of pepper from Malaga. A little further down, a generous banker is loudly complaining about the unreliability of sea routes, his hands gesturing wildly. This is where you learn things. You learn which shipping magnate has overextended his credit, which family's patriarch is in failing health, which voyages are rumored to be blessed with luck and which are doomed from the start. It is here, amidst this river of information, that you first hear the whispers. It isn't loud. It's a subtle shift in the current of the conversation. You ever hear an old man, one of the Badoer clan, talking to a younger merchant? The old man is scolding the youth for a poorly managed investment. Your books are a fantasy. Boy, he says, his voice a low rasp. You count your ducats when you see them, but you don't see the debts that creep in like the tide. You need the method, the one from Florence. The younger man scoffs. The one the Medici use? That's for bankers. I am a trader, and that is why you will remain a small one. The old man retorts, before turning and hobbling away. The method, your ears perk up. You've heard this term before. In passing, it was always spoken of in a slightly hushed, reverent tone, as if describing a secret art or a form of alchemy, a way of keeping books that was supposedly foolproof. It was said to be so clear, so perfect, that it could reveal the true health of a business at a single glance. A few of the truly massive banking families, like the Medici in Florence and some of the older Venetian houses, were rumored to use it. They guarded the knowledge closely. It was their competitive advantage, their crystal ball. You meander over to the Banco Giro, the public bank, where money miners changers sit behind heavy wooden tables, their scales glinting as they weigh coins from a dozen different realms. You strike up a conversation with a clerk you know, a man named Agostino, under the pretense of asking about the exchange rate for the Byzantine Hyperion. After a few pleasantries, you casually mention the conversation you overheard. This Florentine method of accounting, you say, trying to sound nonchalant. Is it truly so different? Agostino leans in, his voice dropping. Different? My friend, it is night and day. They call it Olivenization, the Venetian method, though everyone knows it came from our rivals. I have seen one of these ledgers. It is a thing of beauty, a perfect balance. For every credit, there must be a debit, two sides to every story, written on opposite pages. He gestures with his hands, as if weighing to invisible object. Nothing can be hidden, nothing can be lost. An error on one side creates a disturbance on the other. It is impossible to ignore. It is like God's own accounting. God's own accounting. The phrase hangs in the air. That's what you need. Not the chaotic, human mess on your desk, but something divine, something certain. Historians, of course, debate the exact origins. Was it truly Florence, or Genoa, or did it organically arise here in Venice, born of the sheer complexity of its maritime empire? Some ancient Roman texts show a primitive form of course minus referencing accounts, suggesting the seed of the idea is much older. The truth is likely a tangled web of shared knowledge among the Italian maritime republic. But for you, standing here at the Rialto, the origin doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that it exists, and that some people, your competitors, the men who stride through this square with an unshakable confidence, know the secret. You leave the Rialto with a new kind of anxiety. It's no longer the dulled red of your messy desk. It's a sharp, burning curiosity, a feeling of being left behind. The world is changing. A quiet revolution is happening, not with swords or cannons, but with ink, parchment, and a new way of thinking. And you are on the outside of it. As you walk home, the familiar alleys seem different. The city is still beautiful, but now you see the invisible architecture beneath it, all the structure of credit, debt, profit, and loss that holds these stone pillars up. And you realize, with a sinking feeling, that you don't have the blueprint. The name that Agostino, the clerk, had mentioned keeps echoing in your mind. Olivenization, the Venetian method. It's a frustrating, tantalizing paradox. The secret to fixing your chaotic business is named after your own city, yet it feels as foreign and inaccessible as the Silk Route to Cathay. Who could teach you this arcane art? You can't simply walk into the Sorrento Bank and ask for lessons. It would be like a common foot soldier asking a general for the army's battle plans. The great merchant families guarded this knowledge as they guarded their vaults. Your thoughts drift, your old mentor, back to Master Alberto, though no one has called him that in 20 years. Beto is a character. He was a moderately successful spice merchant in his youth, but a few disastrous voyages in the Black Sea trade, coupled with a fondness for gambling, had relegated him to a more modest life. He now works as a senseo, a broker, negotiating small minus-time deals for a commission in the less glamorous corners of the Rialto. He taught you the basics of trade when you first arrived in Venice as a boy, how to judge the quality of wool, how to spot a clipped coin, and most importantly, how to navigate the city's treacherous social currents. He lives in a cramped apartment in the Castello district, a working minus-class neighborhood far from the grandeur of the Grand Canal. You find him sitting at a rickety table on his small, some-baked terrace, mending a fishing net. He is a barrel-chested man with a wild mane of grey hair and hands as gnarled as olive branches. He squints at you as you approach. Look what the tide dragged in, he grumbles, though a flicker of warmth shows in his eyes. Don't tell me you need another loan. My purse is as empty as the patriarch's promises. No, bet too, I need advice, you say, pulling up a crate to sit on. You explain your predicament. You don't mention the lost receipt for the 40 ducats, that's a private shame, but you describe the overwhelming chaos of your accounts, the constant, gnawing uncertainty. You tell him about the whispers at the Rialto, the talk of a new method, a perfect balance, that lets out a short, harsh laugh. The divine accounting, scriptura doppia, double minus entry. It's not magic, boy. It's just meticulous. Painfully meticulous. He puts down the net, his expression turning serious. I know of it. Of course. We all do. When I was a boy, my master worked for a branch of the Peruzzi Bank. They used it. They said it kept the clerks honest because any theft would scream from the pages like a sinner in hellfire. Can you teach me? You asked, leaning forward, your heart suddenly hopeful. Betto's eyes, the long, weary sound, and stares out at the tiled rooftops. Teacher, I was never told myself. I only saw it. It was like watching an alchemist. 2 big books. Not one. A journal and a quaderno. Everything that happened, every single transaction, no matter how small, was written in the first book. The journal. Then, like a priest transferring holy relics, the clerk would copy the entry into the second book, the great ledger. But he wouldn't write it once. He would write it twice. He holds up 2 thick fingers, twice, once on the left side, under a name like Cash, and once on the right side, under a name like Spice. One was a dare, a 2 give, and the other another, a 2 have. They were like 2 sides of a scale. And at the end of the months, if the totals of all the left pages didn't match the totals of all the right pages, well, you didn't go home until you found the error. You try to picture. It sounds complicated, redundant. Why write everything twice? It seems like more work. You say, puzzled. It is, Betto exclaims, smacking the table with his palm. It's a terrible amount of work. That's why men like me, men like you, we don't use it. We have our day books, our instinct, our memory. Who has the time to be a scribe when there are deals to be made? It's for the great banks, for the state-run galleys. It's for men who have nothing better to do than count the feathers on a chicken. He gets up and starts pacing the small terrace, and it offers no protection from fools. My last big venture, the one that broke me, we had a generous bookkeeper. He used the double minus entry method. The books were perfect, balanced to the last soldo. They showed a healthy, growing enterprise. He stops and looks at you, his eyes filled with a distant pain. But the books can't account for a storm off the coast of Crete that sends 3 ships full of alum to the bottom of the sea. They can balance perfectly, and you can still be perfectly ruined. This is a common sentiment from the era. Many traditional merchants viewed the new method with suspicion. It felt like a clerk's trick, a dry, academic exercise that ignored the visual realities of trade luck, intuition, storms, and pirates. Historians still debate how quickly the method was adopted. It wasn't an overnight revolution. For decades, possibly even a century, Single minus entry and double minus entry coexisted, with many merchants like Betty seeing the latter as an unnecessary, pedantic burden. That TOS outburst has discouraged you, but it has also given you the crucial vocabulary you were missing. Journal. Quaderno. There. However, he may not be able to teach you, but he has given you a map. HES confirmed the rumors and given them a shake. So, you think it's a waste of time? You ask. Betty slumps back into his chair and picks up his net again, his brief flare of passion gone. For venture capitalist financing, a dozen voyages at once. It is the only way to stay sane. For a small trader like you, I don't know. Perhaps it's like a fine suit of armor. It's heavy, it's cumbersome, but it might just stop a blade that you never saw coming. He looks at your face, at your earnest, desperate expression. If you truly want to learn this madness, don't look for a merchant. They guard their secrets. Find a scholar, find a mathematician. They are the ones who love order for its own sake. That's TOS words. It might just stop a blade that you never saw coming. Stay with you. They feel prophetic. You thank him for the advice and the vocabulary lesson, leaving him to his nets and his memories of past failures. As you walk back toward your home, you feel a renewed sense of purpose. Find a scholar, find a mathematician. The idea makes sense. Merchants learn skills to make money. Scholars learn skills for the pure love of knowledge and order. But Venice, for all its commercial brilliance, is not a university town like Padua or Bologna. Its scholars are a different breed, more practical, often tied to the church or to the state, working on cartography, law, or engineering. Finding one who would bother with the lowly art of accounting would be difficult. You arrive back at your scritto io and the sight of the pile on your desk greets you like an old enemy. The unresolved problem of the 40 ducats from Lorenzo still hangs in the air. You have to do something. Relying on your flawed memory and this paper monster is no longer an option. You decide on a bold and potentially humiliating course of action. You will go and speak to Lorenzo directly. Lorenzo is what Venetians call un nuovo ricca, new money. He has a small but ostentatious palazzo near the Campo San Polo, decorated with more marble and gold leaf than taste would strictly advise. You find him in his courtyard, practicing his swordsmanship with a fencing master. He is lithe and quick, his movements flashy. He dismisses his instructor with a flick of his wrist when he sees you, and greets you with a wide, toothy smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. My friend, he says, wiping his brow with a silk cloth. To what do I owe the pleasure? Have you come to offer me another profitable venture? You try to keep your tone light, friendly, perhaps soon. Lorenzo, first, I am trying to bring some order to my books. An old debt from our Alexandria trip. My records are unclear. I just wanted to confirm that we are settled. You are giving him an easy way out, a chance to be honest without accusation. Lorenzo's smile tightens just a fraction. Settled? Of course, we are settled. My man delivered your share the day after I returned. 40 ducats, as I recall, a handsome profit for some simple beads. He turns to admire a newly installed fountain. I have the receipt, of course, filed away by my clerk, a most meticulous man. Your heart sinks. He is claiming to have the receipt, the one you can't find. This is the worst possible outcome. Now, it is your word and your messy pile of papers against his word and his supposedly meticulous clerk. Of course, you say, your voice sounding weaker than you realize. I must have misplaced it. My apologies for bothering you. No bother at all, he says, clapping you on the shoulder. His hand feels heavy. One must be careful. A man's reputation is built on such details. You leave his palazzo feeling smaller than you have in a long time. The humiliation is sharp. He knows you lost the receipt. You know he knows. He holds a power over you now. The quiet power of your own incompetence. Was his clerk truly meticulous? Or did he just see an opportunity? Perhaps he paid you, and is now enjoying your discomfort. Or perhaps he never paid you at all, and his lie is built on the high probability that your records are a shambles. You will never know for sure. The system you use has failed you, not just financially, but reputationally. That even the loss of the 40 ducats feels real and immense. It's not just the money, though that is a significant blow. 40 gold ducats could pay your rent for a year, or buy a small cargo of grain. It's the principle. It is a costly, painful lesson in the price of chaos. Your single minus entry list, your pile of notes, has not just failed to record a profit. It has actively created a loss. It has made you vulnerable. It has made you look like a fool. This kind of incident was tragically common in an economy built on long minus distance trade, credit, and partnerships. Shoddy bookkeeping was a gaping wound through which wealth and trust could bleed out. Historians who examine court records from the period are inundated with cases like yours, disputes over payments, arguments over shared profits, and accusations of fraud, all stemming from mismatched or incomplete records. It was a fundamental weakness at the heart of the glittering Venetian enterprise. You sit at your desk late into the night, the canal outside now dark and quiet. The dancing reflections on the ceiling are gone. You stare at the offending pile of paper, but you no longer see it as just a mess. You see it as a liability, a danger. It is a leaky boat in a stormy sea. That too was wrong. This new method was the luxury. It was the cumbersome suit of armor. It was a lifeline. He had said that even balanced books couldn't save you from a storm. But you realize now that he was missing the point. A storm is an act of God. You cannot control it. But this chaos, this uncertainty, this humiliating loss, this is a storm of your own making. And you can learn to control it. The 40 ducats are gone. Let them be gone. Let them be the price of your education. From this moment on, you will not rest until you have learned the secret of God's own accounting. The search for a scholar was no longer an academic curiosity. It was an absolute necessity. There is a strange, and perhaps apocryphal, story that the famous German artist Albrecht Dürer, during his visit to Venice, was more impressed with the accountant's skills than the painters. He supposedly wrote, "They can reckon and write and have clever artists, but for painting, they are not so good as we are." While likely an exaggeration, it points to a perception that was growing in the air. The true, unique magic of Venice was not in its art, but in its commerce, and you were determined to become a magician. Your quest for a scholar begins. You ask around the city, in the bookshops near the San Marco Basilica and the stationers who sell fine paper and ink to the city as notaries. The initial responses are discouraging. Mathematicians in Venice are concerned with shipbuilding, with the precise curvature of a hull, or with the complex geometry of fortifications for the Republic's overseas colonies. The art of the merchant is considered practical, not theoretical. It's a trade, not a science. Then, one afternoon, you get a lead. A bookseller, a quiet man named Giulio with ink minus stains permanently embedded in his cuticles, mentions a peculiar book. "It is not a book about accounting," he says, polishing a pair of spectacles. "Not really. It is a great summary of all mathematics. A Summa de arithmetica, geometria, proportionae et proportionalite, a beast of a book, written by a Franciscan friar." A friar? This surprises you. You picture friars in prayer or tending to the poor, not wrestling with numbers. "Oh, but this is no ordinary friar," Giulio continues, a smile touching his lips. "This is Luca Pacioli. He is a friend of Leonardo da Vinci, a genius. He taught mathematics at the universities in Perugia, Naples, and Rome. They say he can calculate anything. The book contains everything from algebra to geometry. But," he leans in conspiratorially, "tucked away in the back, there is one small section, a treatise. Particular is de competis et scripturias, details of calculation and recording. In it, he describes the method used by the merchants of Venice. Your heart leaps. This is a book, a manual, a secret, written down for all to see. Do you have it? Can I buy it? You ask, your voice filled with an eagerness you can't hide. Giulio shakes his head sadly. No, it was printed only a year or two ago, in 1494, a masterpiece of the new printing press technology. I had one copy. One. It was immensely expensive. the size of a tombstone and the price of a small horse. The banker from the Grimani family bought it within an hour of it arriving. Your hope deflates as quickly as it had risen. Of course, a banker bought it, but then Giulio offers a sliver of hope. However, the friars at the Basilica dei Ferrari have a library. They receive copies of many important new works. It is possible they have one. Brother Luca is a Franciscan. After all, they would be proud of their celebrity mathematician. The Basilica dei Ferrari. It's a colossal, imposing Gothic church, a mountain of red brick that looms over its neighborhood. Its scale is meant to inspire awe and humility. You have been inside many times for Mass, but you have never considered its library. You make your way there at once. After some nervous inquiries into small donation for the library's upkeep, an elderly librarian with a kind, wrinkled face leads you into a long, quiet hall. The air is cool and smells of old paper, beeswax, and incense. Sunlight streams through high, arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. And there it is, on a heavy wooden lectern, chained to the desk as precious books often are, is the Summa. It is as massive as Giulio described. You approach it with a sense of reverence. The librarian, seeing your intense interest, agrees to let you study it, provided you do not damage the priceless volume. You turn the thick, crisp pages, past the dense sections on geometry, the strange symbols of algebra that look like a secret code, and then you find, Particulars de Compet is at Scripturias, the treatise on accounting. It is only about 30 pages long, a tiny fraction of the whole book, but as you begin to read the Latin, with the help of your rudimentary clerical education, you realize you have found the source code of Venetian commerce. Pacioli, the friar, begins not with numbers, but with philosophy. He writes that a merchant needs 3 things to be successful: sufficient cash or credit, a good bookkeeper, and an accounting system that allows him to see his affairs at a glance. He is not just describing a method, he is describing a moral and orderly universe. He insists that before you even begin, you must make an inventory. You must list everything you own, from your cash and your merchandise down to your household furniture. You must know, precisely, what you are worth at the very start. This is a revelation. You have never done this. You have a vague sense of your assets, but you have never sat down and created a complete, systematic picture of your financial self. Pacioli is telling you that you cannot know where you are going until you know exactly where you are standing. His writing is clear, direct, and practical. He is not a stuffy academic. He is a teacher. He is writing for you. He explains that all accounting is merely an arrangement of debits and credits. Debito and credito. These are the Italian words he uses, the very same words Beto had mentioned. Dare and dava. He lays it out like a divine law for every debit. There must be a corresponding credit. The total of the one must always, equal the total of the other. The system is a closed loop. Nothing can enter or leave without being recorded into places. Historians have a fascinating debate about Pacioli himself. Was he the inventor of double-minus-entry bookkeeping? Absolutely not, and he never claimed to be. He explicitly states in the book's introduction that he is simply describing the method currently in use in Venice. He was not an inventor. He was a codifier, a brilliant explainer. He was the first person to take this trade secret, this graph knowledge passed down from master to apprentice, and write it down in a clear, systematic way. And because his book was printed on the new Gutenberg press, the knowledge, once a secret of the elite, was suddenly democratized. It could spread across Europe like wildfire. You, standing in this quiet library, are one of the very first beneficiaries of this information revolution. You spend the entire afternoon hunched over the great book, carefully copying down notes onto your own wax tablet. The librarian has to gently tap you on the shoulder to tell you the library is closing. You walk home in a daze, the setting sun casting long shadows across the Campi. Your mind is buzzing with new ideas, new terms, inventory, debit, credit, the double-minus entry. It is still a confusing puzzle, but for the first time, you feel like you have all the pieces. You are no longer lost. You have found the map again. The next morning, you don't even glance at the chaotic pile on your desk. It belongs to a past life, to a lesser version of yourself. Today, you begin anew. You take a fresh sheet of gold, crisp parchment, not a cheap scrap ache will, and a pot of new, dark ink. You are following the friar's first instruction: create an inventory, a snapshot of your entire world in numbers. You start with the easy part, cash. You go to the heavy wooden chest where you keep your coin and empty it onto the table. The metallic clink and scrape is a satisfying sound. You separate the coins into piles. Gold ducats, the international standard, stable and beautiful. Silver grossi, copper soldi. You count each pile 3 times, as Pacioli advises, to ensure accuracy. You write it down on the left side of your parchment. Cash 48 ducats, 112 grossi, 200 soldi. This, Pacioli, I would say, is a debit. It is something you have. It is an asset. Now for the hard part, merchandise. You spend the rest of the morning unrolling bolts of cloth. You measure the Flemish linen, the English wool, the Florentine silk. For each one, you must assign a value. This is tricky. Do you use the price you paid for it, or the price you hope to sell it for? Pacioli, I recommend using the cost price. It is a known, certain number. Hope is not a sound accounting principle. This is a crucial, conservative insight that protects against overconfidence. So you find the old receipts some good they are. After all, and meticulously record the cost of each item. Linen, 20 yards at 1 ducat per yard. 20 ducats, another debit, another asset. You move on. You list your furniture, the bed, the desk, the chest. You list your personal effects, 2 good tunics, a silver ring your father left you. Pacioli is adamant about this. To get a true picture, everything must be included. It feels strange, assigning a monetary value to the bed you sleep in, but you understand the logic. It is an asset. You own it. Then comes the most painful part, your debts. You owe the baker for a month's worth of bread. You owe your landlord for the next quarter's rent. And you still owe a small amount to a wine merchant for that disastrously overpriced Malvasia. You list them all on the right side of the parchment. Each one is a credit. It is something you owe. It is a liability. This is the other side of the coin. And then you come to the most confusing, abstract, and brilliant part of the entire system. At the end of this process, you add up all your assets on the left side, the debits. Then you add up all your liabilities on the right side, the credits. They don't match. Of course, they don't. Your assets are far greater than your debts. You are, thankfully, solvent. But Pacioli's law states that the 2 sides must balance. So where does the balancing figure come from? It comes from you. The difference between what you have and what you owe is your own capital, your net worth. You write your own name on the credit side, and next to it, you write the balancing amount. Proprietor's capital, 350 ducats. You stare at the pay. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. On the left, a list of everything you possess. On the right, a list of everyone you owe, with the remainder assigned to your own name. The 2 columns add up to the exact same number. It is a perfect, self-contained universe. It is balanced. It is true. This concept of balancing the initial inventory with the owner's capital is one of the most difficult leaps for people new to the system. It feels like inventing money out of thin air, but it's not. It's simply giving a name to the owner's stake in the business. It treats the business as a separate entity from its owner. The business owes the owner his initial investment and accumulated profit. Historians argue that this conceptual leap separating the business's finances from the owner's personal finances was a critical step towards the idea of the modern corporation, an entity that exists legally separate from its shareholders. Now you are ready to record your first transaction using the double minus entry method. Let's say a customer comes in and buys a small bolt of your cheapest wool for 2 ducats. Push. Under the old system, you would simply write sold wool for 2 ducats. Simple, but incomplete. Now you follow the friar's rules. Every transaction has 2 sides. I give and a take. I debit into credit. So what happened here? First, your cash increased. You received 2 ducats. Cash is an asset, and when an asset increases, you debit it. So you write in your new journal cash, debit 2 ducats. Second, your stock of wool decreased. You gave away some wool. Wool is also an asset, and when an asset decreases, you credit it. So, on the next line, you write wool, credit 2 ducats. You look at what you've written. Debit 2 ducats, credit 2 ducats. A perfect, tiny, balanced story. The scales of your financial universe remain in equilibrium. You haven't just recorded that you got money. You've recorded how you got it. You see the full picture. The cash account went up. The wool account went down. It's elegant. It's logical. It's foolproof. You try another. You pay your rent of 5 ducats in cash. What happens? Your cash, an asset, goes down. So you credit the cash account. Cash, credit 5 ducats. Where did that money go? It went to an expense. You can create an account called rent expense. An expense is a sort of negative equity. It reduces your capital. An increase in an expense is a debit. So you write, rent expense, debit 5 ducats. Again, a perfect balance. Debit 5, credit 5. It's like learning a new language. A language of pure logic. It's slow, it's methodical, but for the first time, you feel a sense of absolute control. The anxiety that has been your constant companion for years begins to recede, replaced by a quiet confidence. The ghost of the lost 40 ducats still stings. But now you see it clearly for what it was: the price of tuition at the University of Hard Knocks. Today, in your quiet room, with a fresh sheet of parchment, your real education has begun. Some scholars have made the curious observation that the rise of this logical, balanced accounting system coincided with the rise of Renaissance perspective in art. Both systems, one for finance, one for a third-rational, mathematical ways of representing the 3-dimensional world on a 2-dimensional surface. A piece of paper or a canvas, both seek to create a coherent, unified, and logical space. It's a contentious idea, but a beautiful one that the same impulse for order and reason was transforming both how Venetians saw their money and how they saw their world. Armed with this newfound knowledge, you feel an almost feverish desire to bring order to your world. The first step, according to Friar Pacioli's guide, is to formalize the process. You can't just use random scraps of parchment anymore. You need proper books. You head back to the stationer's shop, the one run by the ink-stained Giulio. And this time, you are not asking for information, but for supplies. You purchase the beautiful, empty books. They are not cheap. The paper is thick and smooth, made from linen rags, and it is bound in sturdy leather. The stationer tells you the paper is from the mills of Fabriano, widely considered the best in Italy. It's an investment, but you now understand the value of investing in order. The first book, the smaller of the two, is your new journal, your journal. This will be your book of original entry. Pacioli, I calls it the Memoriale, but the Venetian merchants had already adopted the term journal. Here, you will record every single transaction chronologically, exactly as it happened. It will be the narrative of your business day. The second, larger book is the Quaderno, your ledger. This is the heart of the new system. Here, you will create a separate page, or account, for everything you listed in your inventory: a page for cash, a page for linen, a page for wool, a page for your debts to the baker, and a page for your own capital. You spend the entire day preparing your new ledger. At the top of each page, you write the name of the account. Then, using a ruler, you draw a line down the middle of the page. The left column, as you now know, is for debits there. The right column is for credits ever. It looks clean, organized, almost sacred. Now, you are ready. You take a deep breath and open your journal. It's time to make your very first, official, double-minus entry. This is the moment where theory becomes practice. You must transfer your opening inventory, the beautiful, balanced snapshot you created, into these permanent books. Pacioli gives this a special name, the opening entry. It's the genesis of your new financial world. In the journal, you write the date at the top of the page. Then, you begin. You write cash, debit 48 ducats, 112 grossi, 200 soldi. On the line below, indented slightly, you explain the transaction for the cash on hand in the chest on this first day of our new ledger. Then you list all your other assets, one by one, giving each a debit entry in the journal. The linen, the wool, the furniture. Each entry is a clear statement of fact. After all the assets are listed, you move to the liabilities. You write Baker's account, credit to ducats, and below it, the explanation for the amount I owe to Pietro the baker for bread. You list all your other debts, giving each a credit entry. Finally, you record your own stake. You write proprietor's capital, credit 350 ducats, the explanation for the balance of my net worth, invested in this enterprise. You look at the page. The column of debit amounts and the column of credit amounts add up perfectly. The first story in your journal is the story of your own creation, and it is in perfect balance. It is a profoundly satisfying moment. The chaos has been tamed, measured, and confined to the crisp, black lines on this page. But the work is not done. The journal is just the first step. Now comes the slightly tedious, but crucial, act of posting to the ledger. You take your big leather minus, bound quad, and turn to the first page, the one marked cash. In the left minus hand debit column, you write the date and the amount from the journal's first entry, 48 ducats, 112 grossi, 200 soldi. In a small space next to it, you write the page number of the journal where the original entry can be found. This is a critical cross-minus reference. It creates a trail. Now, anyone can see exactly why this amount appeared in the cash account. Then you turn to the page in your ledger marked linen. In the debit column, you record the value of your linen stock, again noting the journal page number. You do this for every single asset. Next, you move to the liability accounts. You turn to the page marked Baker's account. This time, you post the 2 ducats on the right minus hand side. In the credit column, you do the same for all your other debts. Finally, you turn to the page for proprietor's capital and post your 350 ducats in the credit column. It takes hours. Your hand begins to crumb. The process is repetitive, almost ritualistic. Write in the journal, then post to the debit side of one ledger account and the credit side of another. It's a slow, deliberate dance of numbers. Some historians have pointed out the almost monastic nature of this work. The repetition, the meticulous attention to detail, the pursuit of a perfect, incorporate balance. It has the quality of a religious rite. It's no wonder a friar was the one to document it so perfectly. It's a form of meditation, a way of imposing a divine, rational order onto the messy, unpredictable world of commerce. At last, you're finished. Your opening inventory is now fully recorded in your new books. You lean back, stretching your aching shoulders. The sun is setting, casting a warm, orange glow into your room. You look at your old desk, at the pile of chaotic receipts. It looks pathetic now, like a relic from a primitive age. You look at your new books, sitting proudly in the center of the table. They are clean, magical, and true. You haven't made a single ducat of profit yet. You haven't engaged in a single act of trade. All you have done is organize what you already had. But you feel wealthier than you ever have before. You have exchanged the anxiety of not minus knowing for the calm of certainty. You have created a fortress of numbers, a bastion against the chaos that cost you 40 ducats and a piece of your pride. This isn't just accounting. It's a form of enlightenment. You've replaced a vague gut feeling with a clear, verifiable structure. Now, and only now, are you truly ready to do business. A curious but little minus known fact is that early ledgers often began with a religious invocation written at the top of first page, something like in the name of God and of profit. For you, tonight, that phrase feels absolutely right. The next day, you wake with a sense of clarity you haven't felt in years. The sun reflects off the canal in the same shimmering patterns. The gondolier's calls echo in the same melodic way. but your perception of it all has shifted. The world outside is a river of commerce, and for the first time, you have a proper boat, not a leaky raft. Your first customer of the day is a seamstress, a sharp minor-eyed woman named Isabella who is known for her skill and her tough bargaining. She wants to buy a bolt of your Flemish linen. After the customary haggling, you agree on a price 15 ducats. She counts the gold coins into your hand. In the past, you might have just pocketed the money and scribbled Isabel a minus linen minus 15d on a scrap of wood or parchment, hoping you'd remember to log it in your messy daybook later. The transaction would be a floating, disconnected fact. But not today. Today, you are a man of the method. You excuse yourself for a moment and walk over to your desk. You open your journal. The journal, this book, as you now understand it, is the source of all truth. It's the daily chronicle, the financial diary where every event is born before it is sorted into the great ledger. The discipline of writing it down immediately is paramount. Pacioli warned against relying on memory, even for a few hours. Memory, he knew, is a liar. The book is truth. You dip your quill in the ink. You write the date. Then you construct the story of the transaction, following the two minus-sided logic. What happened? First, you received cash. Cash is an asset, and it has increased. Therefore, you debit the cash account. You write cash. Debit 15 ducats. What was the other half of the story? You sold linen. Linen is an asset, but its quantity has decreased. Therefore, you credit the linen account. You write on the next line linen, credit 15 ducats. Then, as the friar instructed, you add a short, clear description beneath the entry sold 1 bolt of Flemish linen to Isabella the seamstress for cash. Look at it. It's perfect. It's a complete narrative. Debit 15, credit 15. The universe is in balance. The entry shows not just that you are richer in cash, but also poorer in linen. The single minus entry method would have only told you the first part, leaving you to wonder later where your inventory was going. The power of the journal, as you're beginning to realize, is its unchangeable, chronological nature. You cannot go back and insert a transaction in the middle of last week's pages. Any attempt to do so would be immediately obvious. You cannot tear a page out, because the page numbers are sequential. This makes the journal a powerful tool against fraud, both by others and by yourself. It forces a kind of radical honesty. You must confess every financial event in the order it occurred. Throughout the day, you continue this new ritual. You pay a courier to Grossi to deliver a message. You open the journal. What happened? Your cash went down. That's a credit to the cash account. What did you get for it? A business expense. You create a new account in your mind for this. Courier expenses. An increase in an expense is a debit. So you write courier expenses. Debit to Grossi. And cash. Credit to Grossi. The story is complete. Later, a familiar face appears at your door. It's Marco, the boatwright, the same one from your hypothetical worries weeks ago. HES here to collect payment for a small repair he did on a rented cargo barge. He hands you a bill for 3 ducats. You don't have enough cash on hand right now, having just paid a supplier. You tell him you will pay him at the end of the week. In your old system, this was a nightmare. You might take his bill and toss it on the pile, where it could easily get lost, or you might just make a mental note, a fragile promise floating in your mind. Now, you have a tool for this. You open the journal. Has any cash changed hands? No. So the cash account is not affected, but the transaction has still occurred. You have incurred a debt. You now owe Marco 3 ducats. This is a liability. An increase in a liability is a credit. So, you write Marco the boatwright. Credit 3 ducats. But what is the other side? The debit? The repair was a cost of doing business. It was an expense. You can create an account for repairs and maintenance. An increase in an expense is a debit. So you write repairs and maintenance. Debit 3 ducats. The entry is balanced. Debit 3, credit 3. No money has moved, but the financial reality of your business has changed. You have a new expense and a new liability. The journal has captured this invisible reality perfectly. When you eventually pay Marco, the entry will be a debit to his account to cancel the liability and a credit to your cash account. The system tracks the promise and its eventual fulfillment in a beautiful, logical way. Historians are still debating the exact form these early journals took. Pacioli described the memoriale rough table, a journal the formal journal, and the quaderno the ledger. Many merchants, especially smaller ones like you, likely combined the first two, going straight to a formal journal. The key innovation wasn't the number of books, but the unshakable, chronological, and narrative structure of the journal itself. It was the foundation upon which the entire logical palace of the ledger was built. By the end of the day, you have a dozen entries in your new journal. Each one is a small, perfectly balanced story. Reading down the page is like reading the chronicle of your day, told in the language of debit and credit. You haven't posted any of these to the big ledger yet. That is a separate task, perhaps for the end of the week. For now, you have the comfort of knowing that everything is captured. Nothing is lost. Nothing is floating in the dangerous ether of your memory. You find a curious little tidbit in your reading of Pacioli. He suggests that, to avoid errors, you should check the math of every journal entry by putting a little /may through the numbers once you've posted them to the ledger. It's a simple, physical act of verification. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the mindset. Trust nothing. Verify everything. Leave a trail. Your messy desk is a monument to trusting memory. Your new journal is a testament to the power of methodical distrust. A few days pass. Your journal is growing. Entry by entry. It feels solid, dependable, but it's still just a story, a chronological list of events. It's not yet an analytical tool. If you wanted to know how much cash you have right now, you'd have to go through every single entry, adding the debits and subtracting the credits. It's better than the old pile, but it's not the at-a-glance clarity the friar promised. Now it's time for the next step in the ritual, the one better described with a sense of posting from the journal to the quaderno, the great ledger. This is the process that transforms your financial narrative into a structured, organized database. If the journal is the story, the ledger is the encyclopedia, where every character or account has its own dedicated page. You set aside a quiet afternoon for the task. You place the journal on your left and the large, there the minus-bound ledger on your right. You'll need your full concentration. An interruption could cause a critical error. You start with the first entry in your journal since the opening inventory, the sale of linen to Isabella for 15 ducats. The journal entry reads cash debit 15, linen credit 15. First, you handle the debit. You turn to the page in your ledger marked cash. This page already has your opening balance in the left minus hand debit column. Now, on the next line down in that same debit column, you write the date of the new transaction. You write 15 ducats, and in the description column, you write a brief note from sale of linen, and most importantly, the page number from the journal. This cross-minus referencing is non-minus negotiable. It's the thread that ties the whole system together. You then place a small check mark or a slash next to the cash debit 15 line in your journal, just as Pacioli suggested. This is your physical confirmation that the entry has been posted. It's done. You don't have to think about it again. Next, you handle the credit part of the same transaction. You flip through the pages of your ledger to find the one marked linen. This page has your opening inventory of linen, valued at its cost price. In the debit column, nil. You make your first entry in the right minus hand credit column. You write the date, 15 ducats, and a note to Isabella the seamstress. You also jot down the journal page number. Then you go back to your journal and put a check mark next to the linen credit 15 line. The first transaction is now fully posted. The story from the journal has been broken down and sorted into the correct files in your grand cabinet of accounts. You move to the next journal entry, paying the courier to Grossi. The entry was courier expenses debit 2, cash credit 2. You find the courier expenses page in your ledger. You had to create this new page, as it didn't exist in your opening inventory. You post the 2 grossy in the left minus hand debit column, check mark in the journal. Then you flip back to the cash page. This time, you make an entry in the right minus hand credit column for 2 grossy, check mark in the journal. This is the Jimmy-Yoshi the puzzle game minus that you now realize is at the heart of the system. Each entry in the journal is a clue that sends you to 2 different places in the ledger. 1 debit, 1 credit. The act of posting is a slow, methodical process of sorting these clues into their proper homes. Then you get to the entry for Marco the boatwright repairs and maintenance debit 3, Marco the boatwright credit 3. You create a repairs and maintenance page and post the debit. Then you create a Marco the boatwright page and post the credit. This page now shows that you're Marco 3 ducats. It's a clear, unmissable reminder of your liability. When you pay him, you will post a debit to this page, which will balance out the credit, leaving his account at 0. The story of the debt will be complete. The process is laborious. It requires focus. But as you work, the genius of it becomes increasingly clear. The journal is for capturing life as it happens, chaotic and unpredictable. The ledger is for creating order out of that chaos. By separating these 2 tasks, the system allows you to be both fast in the moment, writing a quick journal entry, and meticulously organized later, posting to the ledger. A little minus known fact about these early ledgers is their sheer beauty and personalization. Some merchants would hire calligraphers and illustrators to create magnificent frontispiques for their quaderni. They were not just accounting books. They were family heirlooms, testaments to the family's commercial success and diligence, meant to be passed down through generations. Your own ledger is more humble, but you take immense pride in the neatness of your columns and the clarity of your handwriting. It is a work of art in its own right, an art of pure reason. As you continue to post, you start to see the power of having individual accounts. You can now open your ledger to the cash page and see, at a glance, all the money that has come in the debits and all the money that has gone out the credits. A quick subtraction gives you your current balance. No more guessing. You can turn to the linen page and see exactly how much you started with and how much you sold. You have a real minus time inventory. You can look at the page for Marco the boatwright and know instantly who you owe money to. This is the at-a-glance clarity pot you well, I promise. The ledger is your dashboard. It's your control panel. Each page is a gauge that gives you a precise reading on one specific part of your business. Historians argue about whether the merchants of this time truly understood the deeper theoretical implications of what they were doing. Did they see themselves as creating an abstract model of the firm, or were they just following a recipe that they knew worked? The consensus is that most, like you, were practitioners. They were focused on the practical magic, the way this painstaking process of posting could take a stream of messy events and transform it into a crystal minus clear, organized picture of their financial reality. The why was less important than the what, and what it gave them was an unprecedented level of knowledge and control. The end of the month arrives. In your previous life, this milestone would have been met with a vague sense of unease. You might have sifted through your pile of receipts, trying to get a rough feel for whether it was a good month or a bad one. The feeling would have been hazy, impressionistic, and likely wrong. But now, you have the method, and the method has a special ceremony for the end of a period. It is a moment of truth, a day of reckoning for your books. Friar Paci, Pacioli calls it the Summa Summarum, the sum of all sums. Today, we call it trial balance. The purpose of the trial balance is simple, yet profound: to prove that your books are in balance, to prove that for every debit you have posted in your great ledger, there is a corresponding credit of equal value. It is the moment you check to see if the god of mathematics is still smiling upon you. The process begins with your quaderno, the ledger. You must go through it page by page, account by account, and calculate the final balance for each one. You start with the cash account. You add up all the entries in the left minus hand debit column. This is all the cash that came in. Then, you add up all the entries in the right minus hand credit column. This is all the cash that went out. You subtract the total credits from the total debits. The result is your cash balance. You write this number down on a fresh sheet of parchment. Since the debit inflows were greater than the credit outflows, this is a debit balance. Next, you turn to the linen account. You do the same. You take the opening inventory value a debit, add any new purchases more debits, and subtract the value of what you sold the credits. The result is the value of the linen you have left in stock. This is also a debit balance, as it's an asset you still own. You continue this process for every single account in your ledger. For your asset accounts like cash and inventory and your expense accounts like repairs and courier fees, the balances will normally be debits. For your liability accounts like the money you owe Marco the boatwright and your equity account your own capital, the balances will normally be credits. It's painstaking work. Your fingers get smudged with ink as you point to each number, adding and subtracting. You do the calculations twice to be sure. A single mistake in addition here will ruin the whole process. Finally, you have a list on your new sheet of parchment. You have drawn two columns. On the left, you have listed all the accounts with debit balances. On the right, all the accounts with credit balances. Cash balance, debit. Linen balance, debit. Wool balance, debit. Repairs expense, debit. Marco the boatwright, credit. Baker's account, credit. Proprietor's capital, credit. Now comes the moment of truth, the climax of the entire month's work. You take a deep breath and begin to add up the debit column. The numbers swim before your eyes. You check your math again. You arrive at a final number, 410 ducats, 75 grossi. Your heart is pounding. Now for the other side. You begin adding up all the numbers in the credit column. The amount you owe Marco, the amount you owe the baker, your own starting capital. You move your finger down the column, whispering the numbers to yourself. The final sum is 410 ducats, 75 grossi. They match perfectly, to the very last soldo. A wave of relief and triumph washes over you. It worked. The system worked. For a whole month of transactions, of buying and selling, of paying and promising, you have maintained the perfect, divine balance. It's a feeling of profound order, of having wrestled the chaos of reality into a state of perfect, logical harmony. You feel like an astronomer who has predicted the movement of a planet and finds it exactly where his calculations said it would be. This moment, this balancing of the books, is what gave merchants who used this system their swagger, their confidence. They weren't just guessing. They knew. They had proof. Their financial world was rational and legible. Of course, historians are quick to point out that a balanced trial balance isn't a guarantee of perfection. It's a powerful check, but not an infallible one. For instance, if you had completely forgotten to record a transaction, both the debit and the credit, the books would still balance. The transaction would simply have vanished from your financial reality. Or if you had debited the wrong account, say, you debited linen instead of wool, the books would still balance, but your inventory records would be incorrect. The system checks the mathematical integrity, not necessarily the factual accuracy of every entry. The debate over how much merchants of the time understood these limitations is ongoing. For many, the magic of the balancing moment itself was likely seen as sufficient proof of correctness. There's a wonderful, possibly apocryphal story about the great Dutch merchant minus banker Jacob Fugger, who, when asked to forgive a debt owed by the King of Spain, simply tossed the king's bond into the fire in his presence. The gesture was pure theater, a display of immense wealth and power. But behind that gesture was a man who knew, down to the last florin, exactly what that piece of paper was worth and exactly how its destruction would be recorded in his own perfectly balanced ledgers. It would be a simple entry, a debit to an expense account like gifts, favors to royalty, and a credit to loans receivable. The confidence to make such a grand gesture comes from the certainty of the numbers. You look at your balance sheet. It's more than just a proof of your bookkeeping skill. It's a report card. It tells you exactly what you have, what you owe, and what you are worth. You can see your expenses clearly. Are you spending too much on repairs? Too much on couriers? Now you can ask these questions with real data to back them up. This isn't just accounting. It's the birth of business management. You are no longer just a participant in your business. You are an analyst. You have achieved, for the first time, a true God-mind inside you of your own small world. Your newfound confidence is a quiet, internal thing. It's the calm assurance of a man who knows his foundations are solid. But in the bustling, competitive world of Venice, quiet confidence can easily be mistaken for inactivity. One afternoon, you run into Lorenzo at the Rialto. It's the first time you've seen him since your humiliating visit to his palazzo. HES standing with a small group of other young merchants, all dressed in the latest fashions, laughing loudly. He spots you and his grin widens. "Ah, the scholar," he calls out, his voice dripping with condescending bonhomie. "We hear you've forsaken the market for the library, spending all your time with books and ink. Are we? Have you made any money yet? Or just balanced the accounts of your own furniture?" His companions chuckle. The sting of the insult is sharp, but you force a polite smile. Lorenzo's jab hits on a core prejudice of the time. There was often a divide between the mercanti, the swashbuckling traders who relied on intuition, risk, and social connections, and the ragionieri, the accountants or bookkeepers, who were seen as mere clerks, men of numbers, not of action. Two men like Lorenzo. Your meticulous bookkeeping seems timid, fussy, and a waste of precious time that could be spent making deals. I find a little order helps the mind. Lorenzo, you reply calmly. Order, he scoffs, gesturing expansively. The only order that matters is the clink of ducats in your purse. I just closed a deal on a shipment of Cypriot sugar. No books needed. I saw the opportunity. I shook a hand, and the deal was done. My gut told me it was right. While you were teaching your quill to dance, I was making a profit. That's the Venetian way. He has a point, or at least, a very popular one. For centuries, Venetian commerce had thrived on exactly this kind of entrepreneurial spirit. Men who could make quick decisions, assess risk on the fly, and build networks of trustworthy heroes of the Rialto. Their accounting was often an afterthought, a necessary evil to be dealt with later. Lorenzo represents this old guard, a mindset that values instinct over analysis. You simply nod and move on, the laughter of his friends following you. His words don't shake your faith in the method, but they do plant a seed of doubt. Are you being too cautious? Are you becoming a clerk instead of a merchant? This tension is something historians see in the commercial literature of the era. Manuals on trade would advise young merchants to be bold and decisive, while the new accounting manuals, like Pacioli's, preached caution, diligence, and meticulous record-minus keeping. It was a culture in transition, caught between two different ideals of what a successful businessman should be. A week later, you see the practical consequences of Lorenzo's philosophy. A rumor ripples through the market. A galley writing from the Levant reports that the sugar crop in Cyprus was damaged by a blight. The quality is low, and a glut of better minus quality sugar from Egypt is expected to arrive any day, which will cause the price to plummet. Lorenzo's gut feeling has led him into a trap. He made a quick deal based on old information and pure optimism. Now HES stuck with a cargo of inferior sugar that he likely paid too much for, and he'll be lucky to sell it at a loss. You, on the other hand, had also been considering a sugar venture, but your new, analytical mindset had made you more cautious. Before committing, you had spent time talking to sailors and clerks, gathering information. You had created a small, hypothetical projection on a scrap of parchment, estimating potential costs, shipping fees, and a range of possible sale prices. The numbers showed the profit margin was thin and the risk was high. Your analysis, not your gut, told you to wait. Your system hadn't made you a profit. It had, however, saved you from a loss. This is a crucial, often overlooked, benefit of good accounting. It's not just about counting your winnings. It's about not playing a losing hand in the first place. But Lorenzo, like many who rely on ego and intuition, is unlikely to admit his mistake. When you see him next, HES boasting about a new venture, a shipment of wine from Crete. He has already forgotten, or is pretending to forget, the sugar debacle. His financial life is a series of disconnected gambles. He remembers his wins vividly and conveniently ignores his losses. And this is where his single minus entry, chaotic accounting system enables his self-minus deception. Without a clear, balanced picture of his finances, he can easily fool himself. A loss on a sugar deal can be mentally offset by an imagined future profit on a win deal. There is no final reckoning, no trial balance to force him to confront the grim reality. He is flying blind, navigating by the flashes of his successes while ignoring the vast, dark patches of his failures. There is a strange, little minus known accounting practice from this period that perfectly illustrates this mindset. It was called fictitious accounting. If a merchant suffered a catastrophic loss, like a shipwreck, he might not record the loss immediately. Instead, he would create a fake account, a suspense account, and park the loss there, pretending it was a receivable from a distant, imaginary debtor. He would then try to make enough profit over the next few years to quietly pay off this fictitious debt to himself. It was a way of hiding a catastrophic failure from partners, investors, and even from oneself, in the desperate hope of trading your way out of the hole. It was financial denial. Codified, Lorenzo, you suspect, runs his entire business as one giant, informal suspense account. Your path is different. It is slower, less glamorous. You haven't made a spectacular profit that you can boast about at the Rialto, but your small business is stable. You know, with absolute certainty, your financial position, while Lorenzo is riding a roller coaster of high-minus stakes gambles. You are building a foundation, brick by meticulous brick. His laughter still rings in your ears, but it sounds different to you now. It sounds hollow. It sounds like the bravado of a man who is afraid to look at his own books. As your business grows, your transactions become more complex. You're no longer just buying and selling cloth. You've invested in a 1-8 share of a new cargo barge, a sturdy vessel designed for the river trade up the Po Valley. The barge isn't something you'll sell. It's an asset that will, hopefully, earn you income over many years. You record the purchase in your journal. Of course, I debit to a new account, barge share, and a credit to CAF. It sits in your ledger as a beautiful, solid asset. You feel a sense of pride in this ownership. A year passes. The barge has worked hard, all in grain and timber, and has brought you a steady stream of income which you have meticulously recorded. But one evening, as you're reviewing your ledger, you look at the barge share account. The number, your initial investment, stares back at you, unchanged. But that can't be right. The barge is a year older. It has endured a year of sun, storms, and heavy loads. Its timbers are a little more waterlogged, its sails a little more frayed. It is, undeniably, worth less than when it was new. Your books, for all their perfect balance, are telling a small lie. They are not accounting for the slow, invisible decay of time. This problem is a sophisticated one, and it's a hurdle that many early adopters of double-minus entry struggled with. How do you account for something that isn't a transaction? No money has changed hands. No one has handed you a bill for 1 year of wear and tear. It's a silent, creeping expense. You recall a section in Friar Pos, Ali's Summa, that you had glossed over at first, thinking it was too complex. It dealt with making provisions for the future. He discussed the need to periodically review your assets and adjust their value to reflect their true state. This concept is the ancestor of what we now call depreciation. Understanding and applying depreciation is a major step up in your accounting sophistication. It requires you to make an estimate, an informed guess. This feels uncomfortable at first. The beauty of the system so far has been its reliance on whole, transcational numbers. Depreciation introduces an element of judgment. How long will the barge last? 10 years? 20? You talk to boatwrights, to other owners. You come to a consensus that a well-maintained barge of this type has a useful life of about 10 years, after which its repair costs would make it uneconomical. So, you decide on a simple, Logical method. You will take the initial cost of your share and divide it by 10. This amount will be the barge's annual loss in value. It is the cost of using the barge for 1 year. It is an expense. Now, how to record this in your perfectly balanced book? You open your journal. You need to record an expense for the wear and tear on the barge. So you create a new expense account, depreciation expense. Like all expenses, an increase to it is a debit. You write depreciation expense. Debit 1 minus 10th of the barge's cost. Okay, that's the debit. But what is the credit? You haven't paid out any cash. The asset itself, the barge, has lost value, so you must credit an account that reduces the barge's value. Here, early accountants had a few different ideas. The simplest way would be to directly credit the barge share account itself. This would reduce its value on the books, but many felt this was messy, as it would erase the original cost of the asset from the main ledger page, which they wanted to preserve for reference. So they invented a clever new type of account, a contra minus asset account. You decide to call yours accumulated depreciation of bar. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's precise. This account is directly linked to the barge share asset, but it works in reverse. While the asset account has a debit balance, this new contra minus asset account will have a credit balance. So your journal entry is complete depreciation expense. Debit amount and accumulated depreciation of barge. Credit same amount. The entry is balanced. You post it to your ledger. Now, when you want to know the true value of your barge share, you look at the debit balance in the barge share account and subtract the credit balance from the accumulated depreciation account. The result is the book value of the asset. It's elegant. It separates the historical cost from the accumulated wear and tear, giving you a much clearer and more honest picture. The exact methods and theories of depreciation were a subject of intense debate for centuries. What we just did is straight minus line depreciation, the simplest method, but other, more complex methods were developed. The core idea, however, born in these early days of accounting, was revolutionary. It was the formal recognition that time itself has a cost. It forced merchants to be more realistic about the long minus term profitability of their investments. An asset was just a 1 minus time purchase. It was a resource that was consumed over time, and that consumption had to be accounted for. This concept gave practitioners of the method a huge advantage in capital minus intensive businesses. While a merchant like Lorenzo might look at his new ship and see only a glorious asset, a merchant like you would see a depreciating asset, a ticking clock. This would encourage you to make sure the income from that asset was more than enough to cover its silent, invisible decay. It fostered a more sustainable, long minus term mindset. It's a subtle point, but it changed everything. Accounting was no longer just about recording the past. With the introduction of concepts like depreciation, it became a tool for predicting the future, for making more rational decisions about long minus term investments. You look at your ledger, now with its new, sophisticated entry. You haven't just recorded a number, you've recorded the passage of time. You've captured a ghost. Your reputation in the smaller merchant circles of Venice is beginning to change. You are no longer seen as the timid scholar Lorenzo Mo. Instead, you're gaining a name as a man who is solid, reliable, and meticulous. Your books are known to be immaculate. Other small traders, men who are struggling with their own chaotic piles of receipts, start coming to you for advice. You are becoming a quiet authority. This new status brings you an opportunity. An older, respected wool merchant named Niccolo, whose eyesight is failing, asks if you would be willing to help him sort out his own accounts. He suspects his clerk, a young man from out of town, might be either incompetent or dishonest, but his own records are too muddled for him to be sure. He offers a modest fee for your time. You agree? More out of curiosity than for the money. This will be a test. Can your methodical approach entangle someone else's chaos? You arrive at Niccolo's warehouse, the large, dusty space filled with the earthy smell of raw fleece. The clerk, a sullen young man named Filippo, reluctantly shows you the books. They are kept in the double minus entry style. On the surface, they look impressive. The journal is filled with entries, and the ledger has pages for all the requisite accounts. Filippo even produces a trial balance from the previous month that is perfectly balanced. As you can see, Filippo says with a smug air, everything is in perfect order. But Niccolo is insistent. My profits are down. The old man says, his voice troubled. I feel it in my bones. But the books say all is well. It makes no sense. You decide to conduct what would one day be called an audit. You're not just going to check them out. You're going to trace the story. You start where all stories begin, with the source documents. You ask to see the original sales receipts, the purchase invoices, the wage slips for the workers. You begin a slow, painstaking process. You take the first entry in the journal for the month. It says, cash debit 50 ducats, all credit 50 ducats, for sale to the tailor Tommaso. You find the corresponding sales slip. It is indeed for 50 ducats. You trace the posting to the ledger. The debit went to cash. The credit went to all. Everything seems correct. You do this for hours. Entry after entry. Sale after sale. Everything matches. The books are, on the surface, perfect. Filippo watches you with a look of growing impatience, as if you are wasting his time. You start to wonder if the old man's instincts are simply wrong. But then you notice something, a tiny, insignificant detail. Every time a sale is made for cash, the journal entry is perfect. But several times a week, the warehouse runs out of small coins for paying workers or couriers. For this, they use a petty cash box, a small chest with a few ducats in it, managed by Filippo. When Filippo takes money from the main cash chest to refill the petty cash box, the transaction should be recorded. It would be a debit to petty cash and a credit to cash, a simple transfer between two asset accounts. You notice that Filippo is recording these transfers. You see them in the journal: petty cash debit 10 ducats, cash credit 10 ducats. It's posted correctly. It has no effect on the overall balance. Everything seems fine. But then you decide to do something no one else has thought to do. You start adding up all the petty cash replenishment tests for the entire month. 10 ducats here, 5 ducats there, another 10. The total comes to 85 ducats. It seems a bit high for small expenses, but not impossible. You then go to the petty cash expenses account in the ledger. You look at the receipts Filippo has collected for these small payments: safe you sold eye to a beggar, a grocer for a cup of wine for a visiting captain. You add them all up. The total of all the legitimate petty cash expenses for the month is only 65 ducats. There is a 20 minus ducat discrepancy. The books are balanced. The trial balance is perfect, but 20 ducats have vanished. Your heart quickens. You have found the ghost. Filippo has been a little too clever. He correctly records the transfer of, say, 10 ducats from the main cash box to the petty cash box. But then, he only spends 8 ducats on legitimate expenses. He pockets the other 2 ducats. He then throws away the receipts for the 8 ducats he actually spent. At the end of the month, to make his petty cash account balance, he simply makes a fraudulent journal entry: various expenses debit 10 ducats. Petty cash credit 10 ducats. He debits an expense account and credits the petty cash account. The books balance, but the expense is overstated by 2 ducats, and the cash is gone. HS been doing this in small amounts, week after week, 2 ducats here, 3 there, insignificant amounts that no one would notice, but over a year, it adds up to a substantial sum. It's a slow, methodical bleed. This is a classic example of how a balanced set of books can still conceal fraud. The system is only as honest as the person making the entries. However, the system's true power is that it leaves a trail. The fraud is not visible in the trial balance, but it is detectable by comparing the book entries to the real minus world source documents. The double minus entry system creates a detailed map of a business's reality. If the map doesn't match the territory, you know something is wrong. You calmly lay out your findings for old Niccolo, showing him the log of cash transfers and the corresponding smaller total of actual expense receipts. The old man's face darkens with anger. Filippo, when confronted, turns pale and starts to stammer. He confesses everything. The debate among historians here is fascinating. Some argue that double minus entry bookkeeping actually increased certain types of fraud, because it created a false sense of security. A lazy or trusting owner might just look at the balanced trial balance and assume all was well, making it easier for a clever clerk to hide theft within the complex machinery of the accounts. Others argue the opposite, that the logical structure and the audit trail it creates make the detection of fraud far more likely, acting as a powerful deterrent. Your experience with Filippo suggests the latter is true. The system isn't a vault, but it is a very effective alarm. You leave Nicolo's warehouse that evening with a deeper respect for your craft. You are not just a bookkeeper. You are a detective. You are a seeker of truth in a world of numbers. Your meticulousness, the very trait Lorenzo mocked, has uncovered a crime that instinct and gut feeling could only sense, but never prove. Your success in the case of Nicolo's thieving clerk spreads to the Rialto like wildfire. It's a much better story than simply having meat books. You uncovered a crime. You brought a scoundrel to justice. You are no longer just the scholar. You are the man who sees the truth in the numbers. This new reputation opens doors that were previously closed to you. One day, you are summoned to the offices of the Pacioli family, one of Venice's most powerful and respected patrician clans. Their wealth is ancient, built on centuries of shrewd trading in the Levant. Being asked to their palazzo is like being called up to the major leagues. You walk with a mix of excitement and trepidation through corridors hung with priceless Flemish tapestries, your simple wool tunic feeling woefully inadequate. You are led into a study where Girolamo Pacioli, the patriarch of the family, sits behind a massive oak desk. He is an old man, but his eyes are sharp and intelligent. He gets straight to the point. "We are putting together a consortium," he says, his voice dry and raspy like old parchment. "A major venture. 2 of our largest galleys, bound for Alexandria and then on to Beirut. We will be trading for spices, pepper, cloves, nutmeg. The risks are enormous. Pirates, storms, the Sultan's fickle moods, but the potential profits." He lets the sentence hang in the air, the implication of immense wealth understood. "We are seeking investors to share the risk and the reward," he continues. "We are pooling our capital. Each investor will contribute a sum and will receive a share of the final profit proportional to their investment. We are not looking for gamblers. We are looking for serious men of business. We require every major investor to submit their books for our review. We must know that our partners are solvent, stable, and not on the verge of collapse." This was a common practice for large, high-minus-stakes ventures. Before entering a partnership, you had to prove your financial health. It was a form of due diligence. Girolamo Pacioli looks at you expectantly. "Your name has come to us. They say your books are a model of the new method, that they are clear and honest. We would like to see them." Your heart pounds in your chest. This is the moment your entire journey has been leading to. All those painstaking hours spent copying entries from the journal to the ledger. All the tedious calculations for the trial balance. The intellectual effort of understanding depreciation, it was all preparation for this. The next day, you return to the Pacioli Palazzo. You are carrying your quaderno. Your great ledger. It feels heavy in your hands, not just from its physical weight, but from the weight of the story it contains. You present it to Pacioli's chief accountant, a severe Minos-looking man with spectacles perched on his nose. The accountant doesn't just glance at it. He spends the next hour poring over your pages. You watch as he traces your entries, his finger moving from the debits to the credits. He nods approvingly at your neatly cross-minus referenced journal pages. He examines your depreciation entry for the barge share, a small smile touching his lips, a sign of respect for your thoroughness. He sees the story of your business, a small but stable enterprise, with manageable debts, a clear understanding of its assets, and a steady, if modest, growth in owner's capital. Your books don't scream spectacular success, but they whisper something far more valuable to these men: reliability. While he is occupied, you can't help but think of Lorenzo. What would he do in this situation? He would likely produce a chaotic mess of a daybook, supplemented by bravado and grand promises. His financial state would be opaque, a matter of guesswork for the Pacioli accountants. They would have to take him at his word, a risk that these cautious, old-money families are seldom willing to take. Lorenzo S. intuitive, but feel approach to business qualifies him for small-time gambles, but it disqualifies him from a seat at this table. Access to big capital requires the language of big capital, and that language, you now realize, is double-entry bookkeeping. The accountant finally closes your ledger and gives a curt nod to Girolamo Pacioli. The books are sound, he says. It is the highest praise he can offer. Pacioli smiles. Excellent. We would be honored to have you as a partner in our venture. A small share, to begin with. 500 ducats. 500 ducats. It is more money than you have ever handled at one time. It represents most of your accumulated capital. It is a huge risk, but it is a calculated risk. A partnership with the most reliable players in the city. This is how real fortunes are made in Venice. Not through reckless, solo gambles, but through carefully structured, large-scale, shared-risk enterprises. You walk home from the palazzo in a state of elation. You have been accepted. Your meticulous, boring accounting has been your ticket to the inner circle. It was the key that unlocked the door to a level of opportunity you had only dreamed of. The historical debate here is whether double-entry bookkeeping was a cause of the commercial revolution or an effect of it. Did the system create the complex business structures like the Pacioli Consortium, or did the existence of these complex ventures necessitate the development of a better accounting system? The truth, as is often the case, is likely a feedback loop. The growing complexity of trade demanded better tools, and the development of better tools, like double-entry, enabled even greater complexity. You are living proof of this synergy. Your personal adoption of this new technology has allowed you to graduate to a more complex and profitable form of commerce. There's a little known detail about these large Venetian ventures. They were often structured as a separate legal entity, with their own set of books, completely independent of the investor's personal books. When you give your 500 ducats to Pacioli, a new set of ledgers will be opened, just with a single spice voyage. Your investment will be a credit on those books, a liability that the venture owes to you. The entire voyage will be accounted for with the same double-entry precision. It is the birth of project-based accounting, the ancestor of the way modern corporations account for major initiatives. Your boring skill is the building block of it all. Contributing 500 ducats to the Pacioli Spice venture is the single largest financial act of your life. You record it in your journal with a hand that is not entirely steady. The entry is simple enough: a credit to cash for 500 ducats, and a debit to a new asset account you create. Investment in Pacioli Spice venture. The money is gone from your chest, but it has to vanish. It has been transformed into a new kind of asset, a claim on a future profit. Your personal books are still in perfect balance. Life returns to a new normal. You continue to manage your own small trade in textiles, your books capturing every small Victorian minor expense. But now, there is a constant, low-level hum of anticipation in the background. Your fortune is tied to 2 galleys sailing on the far side of the sea. All you can do is wait and trust in the vast, complex machinery of Venetian commerce. They are conducting a surprise audit. A rumor has spread that a well-known banking house, the Bank of Vecchio, is insolvent. They have been lending money recklessly and are unable to meet their obligations. In a city built on credit, the failure of a bank is a catastrophe. It can trigger a domino effect, bringing down dozens of merchants who had deposits with them or relied on their credit. The government has stepped in to investigate and contain the damage. The auditors are stern, humorless men. They move from one merchant's office to another, demanding to see their ledgers. They are looking for who has money deposited in the failing bank, and who owes money to it. Their goal is to map the entire web of debt and credit before panic can unravel it completely. Fear is palpable in the air. Merchants who keep sloppy records are terrified. They have no quick way of proving their own solvency. They will have to spend days, maybe weeks, sifting through their chaotic papers to demonstrate their financial position to the auditors, all while their own creditors grow nervous. A man could be ruined, not because he is poor, but because he cannot prove, quickly and definitively, that he is rich. Then, the two auditors appear at your door. Your heart freezes for a second, even if you have nothing to hide. A visit from the agents of the Council of 10 is a terrifying experience. "We need to see your books," the senior auditor says, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. You nod, take a deep breath to steady your nerves, and retrieve your quaderno and journal. You present them with a quiet confidence that you did not possess a year ago. They don't need to ask you questions. The books speak for themselves. They open the ledger to your cash account. They can see your deposits and withdrawals. They check your accounts receivable, a page where you list who owes you money. They check your accounts payable, where you list who you owe. They can see, at a glance, that you have no exposure to the failing Vecchio bank. One of the auditors raises an eyebrow when he sees the entry for the Pacioli venture. He traces it back to your journal, reads the description, and then looks at your capital account. He can see that you invested from your own accumulated profits, not with borrowed money. He can reconstruct the entire story of your business in a matter of minutes. Your books are clear, transparent, and balanced. They are an undeniable statement of your financial health. There is no ambiguity, no room for suspicion. After what feels like an eternity, but is probably no more than 15 minutes, the senior auditor closes your ledger. He gives you a curt, almost perceptible nod. Your affairs are in order, he says, and then they are gone, moving on to the next merchant, the next potential source of chaos. You slump into your chair, the adrenaline draining away. You have just passed a stress test of the highest order. You're meticulous. Private discipline has become your public shield. It protected you. This event highlights a key reason why the Venetian state tacitly and eventually actively encouraged the adoption of double-minus entry bookkeeping. It wasn't just good for merchants. It was good for the Republic. In a tightly interwoven economy like Venice's, financial clarity was a matter of state security. The ability to quickly and accurately assess the financial health of the market during a crisis was invaluable. It allowed the government to act with precision, to isolate problems before they became plagues. Historians debate how widespread this kind of government audit was, but the legal framework for it certainly existed. A merchant's books were not always considered private. They could be called upon as evidence in court or, in cases like this, as a tool of state economic policy. There's a lesser-minus known aspect to Venetian law that underscores this. The Republic had specific statutes about what constituted a valid set of account books for legal purposes. Books that were not properly bound, had pages missing, or showed signs of alteration could be thrown out of court. The state itself was promoting a culture of good bookkeeping because a transparent market was a stable market, and a stable market was the source of Venice's power. Wait till that day. You hear the news. The Vecchio bank has indeed collapsed. Several prominent merchants who were heavily involved with it have been ruined overnight. Lorenzo, you hear, lost a significant sum he had on deposit there. It was a fatal blow for him, but it was a serious one. You can't help but wonder what state his records were in when the auditors came knocking. The thought gives you no pleasure, only a quiet reaffirmation that you have chosen the right path. Your boring books are your fortress, and today they withstood a siege. The seasons turn. The initial fear of the Vecchio bank collapse subsides, leaving behind a changed landscape. The merchants who survived are more cautious. Credit is tighter. A reputation for stability and orderliness, once considered a bit dull, is now a prized asset. Your own standing has never been higher. Then, one brisk autumn morning, news arrives on a fast galley from Crete. It's not good news. A sudden, violent storm, the Bora, had swept through the eastern Mediterranean. Several trading vessels were caught in it. One of them, The Leone d'Oro was lost with all hands and all cargo. The Leone d'Oro was not one of the Priuli ships, but it was a vessel owned by a consortium of smaller merchants, and its principal investor, the man who had staked the most and organized the voyage, was Lorenzo. The news hits the Rialto hard. It's one thing for a bank to fail due to human folly. It's another for the sea, the ultimate arbiter of Venetian fortune, to claim its due. But for Lorenzo, it is an unmitigated disaster. The ship was carrying his dreams of a major windfall, a cargo of sweet Malvasia wine that he had hoped would erase the memory and the financial dent of the Vecchio bank failure. You see him a few days later. He looks like a different man. The flashy clothes are gone, replaced by a somber, dark tunic. The arrogant swagger has vanished, leaving behind a stooped, defeated posture. He looks 10 years older. He is financially ruined. His friends, the ones who had laughed at you, are nowhere